So, Angelo often talks about how suffering is actually one of the greatest gifts we can receive. And it sure doesn't feel that way sometimes. It sure feels like it frankly feels gratuitous far too often. And it goes on for so long sometimes. And it just kind of gets driven deeper and deeper into the body. And then you have to go through the whole unbinding process to get, to unbind it, to let it work itself through whatever the hell it is. I mean, I don't really understand what dimension this shit hides in, but seems to be just empirically, just based on my own experience, what seems to be happening in many people's reports. But it seems like if you're lucky, if you're lucky enough to have a reasonably secure life where most of the Maslow's hierarchy needs are met, let's just kind of assume that for now. Because sometimes it seems like humanity as a whole needs to not needs to, I don't know, seems to humanity as a whole seems to go through cycles where a kind of collective suffering prods us into growth, hopefully. But let's leave that aside for now. Let's talk about personal suffering for someone who's has most of, has food, clothing, shelter, and so most of their suffering is going to be in basic personal security. So most of their suffering is going to be either misfortunes or internal suffering. I read the book The Alchemist when I was in my 20s, and I was kind of in a place where I was trying not to be impressed by things. So I remember being kind of unimpressed with it. But I recently saw a video that explained the book in a way that I appreciated more. And that was the sense that, like, this kid was happy in his church with his sheep, and then there were like some omens. They're like, oh, there's a big treasure somewhere. Go search out the treasure. And so that opens up suffering because it's like, oh, well, there's no treasure here, and I'm told there's a treasure somewhere else. So eventually he sells everything and making, starts the journey to the treasure. Of course, he's immediately robbed. Spoiler alerts, by the way, if you haven't read it. He's immediately robbed, penniless. He has nothing at all. And so he kind of crawls his way to a crystal shop and is like, "Hey, can I polish your crystal for food?" And anyway, turns out he's an advertising genius, and he turns the shop into a big success, and everything's great. Um, with that niggling, like, yeah, wasn't I here for something? And then he ends up sort of like, all right, okay, I'll go find the treasure, leave this happy crystal shop because this thing's niggling. It's causing me to uh, to want something that's not here, right? So he goes, through the deserts to some degree, and then he lands in this oasis, and he has a prophetic dream, and he saves the oasis, and he's everybody's hero, and he finds a beautiful girl, and it's like, oh, he's kind of happy in the oasis. He can just stay there. And then eventually, like, there's omens, there's more dreams, I think, and he's like, all right, fine, I'll go meet my destiny. And guess what? That totally fails. He gets to the place he's supposed to go, and he gets beaten up and left for dead. And then all of a sudden, somebody says something that makes him realize, oh, the treasure was under the church, the abandoned church where I was at the very beginning. Metaphor alert. Um, so yeah, he goes back and probably I think he picks up his girl and says hi to his crystal shop friend and then goes back to his church, finds his treasure, and everything's great. Um, but the point is, if he had just found the treasure without going through all of those trials, he'd be a very different person. He'd have a very different life experience. He might just be like one of those lottery winners who, like, they win the lottery and then they're so undeveloped as a person They just kind of piss it away and then end up worse off than they were before, right? But he went through the trials, he went through the suffering, he went through the character development, and now he can appreciate what he has, right? Because that's the real prize, is not the treasure, it's the self development. Um, and that's part of what's ironic about the non dual path is like everybody thinks there's going to be superpowers, there's going to be like magic or saving the world or whatever their shiniest um, you know, wish is. They somehow think that they're going to get that if they get enlightened. Um, it's generally not how it works, but it gets them going. Just like the promise of the treasure at the pyramids got the guy going. Um, and then by the time you figure out what the real treasure is, you're ready to enjoy it and not just be a total ass about it. Hopefully. And the same video, I'll link to it below. The same video talked about the prodigal son and how, one of the sons is like, give me half my inheritance, I'm going to get out of here. And so the father does. Um, the son leaves and he spends it on, women and whiskey and gambling and whatever, and it's all gone. And so he realizes, like, wow, I really screwed up. I thought this is what life was about, and it's not. What do I do now? And so, kind of having nowhere else to go, he kind of limps back home, like crawls back home on his knees, like, hey, I screwed up. I'm sorry. If I can be your servant, uh, I will be. If you would be so kind as to accept me as your humble servant, right? And the father says, no, we're going to kill the fatted calf. You're welcome back, son. And this story really ticked me off when I was a kid because I was like, this guy was responsible and this guy was not, and you're celebrating the irresponsible one. Like I was the same as the other brother. Like what? WTF, dude? Um, I think the message is that one of them took initiative. One of them was tested by the world instead of staying where it's safe. One of them took a risk. And I mean, I don't recommend everyone taking half of your trust fund or whatever and just, you know, pissing it away. But the father could see that the son had learned a very valuable lesson, and not just theoretically, but experientially. And and that's the thing. You can't just, like I say all the time, you can't. I knew all this wisdom in my 20s. I had access to all this wisdom in my 20s, but it wasn't a lived experience yet. So it was fragile. It was theoretical, I guess. It was in my mind, it wasn't in my bones. Like humans seem to learn the hard way. It seems to be the point of being human to learn the hard way. If you just sort of skip to the end of the book, read the last page, have you really read the novel? No, you haven't. If you get a medical degree without going to medical school, how good of a doctor are you going to be? But yeah, personally, I'm really grateful that my suffering has mostly been internal as opposed to externally imposed. I mean, when I was a kid, of course, that's one thing. I'm talking about as an adult. I've been fortunate in my actual life, but the suffering has always kind of been there like a pitchfork in my ass. And it's like, what are you doing? Why are you suffering? Things are fine. But the pitchfork was still like poking, like, and so eventually it poked hard enough. I was like, fine, like 3 years ago. Like, I don't get it. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I'll figure it out. And that's when the whole sort of healing journey began that led to the non-dual path and so on. Um, and I think Angela is right that that was a gift, because if I had stayed, I could have stayed. I could have just been content with things as they are. And many humans seem to be, and that's great. But something kept prodding me further. And once I started accepting that as a gift instead of resisting it as a burden, things really started to shift. And suffering can still be acute. Grief can still happen. Anger, sadness, confusion. But it's so different than it used to be. And I'm no longer, yeah, it's no longer so conditional. It's no longer like, as long as things stay like this, then I'll be okay. I certainly hope things, knock wood. I hope everybody stays safe and healthy for a good long time. But there's no guarantee of that. And there is a guarantee that it's not going to be forever. So then what? I'm grateful it didn't take a more serious cataclysm to get me to start waking up. And meanwhile, it's not like you wake up and then you're free of suffering. Maybe some people get a honeymoon period, but then it all crashes down again, right? In some ways worse than before. But it's trying to teach you something. It's a teacher. It's a tough taskmaster. It's doesn't let you off the hook. It stays after you until you get it. Angela says, once you reach a certain point, don't resist. It's not going to work, and it's not going to help, and you just gotta keep forging ahead. And it'll prod you into places you don't want to go. Your ego doesn't want to go. Yourself doesn't want to go. Your mind doesn't want to go. And that seems ultimately a blessing. It's so very mysterious. And you don't get to you don't get to have a map. You don't get to have a guarantee. The only guarantee seems to be you'll keep suffering uh, until you figure out how not to. And the only thing that teaches you how not to suffer is suffering. It's kind of convoluted, I get that. Couldn't we all just be happy from the get-go? Why all this? I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows. But what people have reported and what I am experiencing is that this strange alchemy is unlikely to happen without a pitchfork in your ass. So thanks for the pitchfork, and good luck to everyone because it's yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's definitely not for the faint of heart, but you can do it. I hope. I hope I can do it.